What we're going to look into today is the life of a stager, how they started, what's going on in the industry, how they have a competitive advantage, how they help realtors, all that fun stuff. Hey everybody, it's David Cinelli here with DC Talks Podcast. I got a really special guest. Well, two guests, we don't always bring two guests on, but today's a special treat. What we're going to look into today is the life of a stager, how they started, what's going on in the industry, how they have a competitive advantage, how they help realtors, all that fun stuff. So without further ado, I'm going to give you my special stagers. I almost called you guys realtors. My secret weapon, my lovely wife and Julia, who are both partners at Spaces Collective, staging company. Welcome.
Does your wife have a name?
My wife has a name. It is Natalie and Cinelli. And those of you that watch, follow along with us on Instagram, see our weekly Stagers Corner segment. Again, Julia, you have to, one of these days, you do have to come make an appearance with us.
I will.
You started that. I know. It's just easier because Natalie and I do in the house, right? So,
yes.
Yeah. Anyway, so for those of the people that don't know, want to see how you guys got started, what it's like I mentioned in the intro. So we're going to start at the beginning so Julia, obviously Natalie and I have known each other for a number of years. Mm-hmm. We met each other, I think I was in grade 8, you're in grade 7.
That's right.
So we go way back, but most people don't know, you guys also kind of go way back. How did that actually start?
Well, it's actually a bit layered. So we met through a mutual friend and then kind of found out from there that our mothers used to work together. And
for how long?
For years and years.
Yeah.
And then they have a mutual really good friend. And then we met through a mutual friend as well. And then we moved on to the same street that you guys lived on randomly.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of snowballed from there.
Well, it wasn't so random. You lived next door to us.
No, we moved on to that street though randomly.
Yeah.
And actually really, as we started to peel back those layers, it was just kind of crazy. We found out our birthdays are 3 days apart. Yeah. Our kids' birthdays are really close together.
Me and Paul,
9 days apart.
Julia, your husband and I, our birthdays are a week apart.
A week apart.
Yeah. It's we've been living these parallel lives and they've been so parallel that we should have met a long time ago.
Yeah.
And finally they intersected.
Yeah.
I really think it just solidifies what's meant to be is meant to be,
Yeah. So now we have Spaces Collective, but Spaces Collective didn't just start, right? So Natalie and I have been Natalie used to be my secret weapon, but used to be a photographer when you were my secret weapon. So what people don't know is when I started in real estate, I would, when I go to a listing presentation, I would talk to the potential buyers. I say, well, I have a great staging consultant. Never told them it was my wife. And at the time, Natalie was a photographer, came from her history of guests and the corporate was doing, and then transitioned to a full-time photographer. But she always had a knack for, looking at great houses and then being able to, decorate houses and not decorate, but, just style them nicely. So I would have her walk through the home and, start, telling people what they needed to do. And then eventually we started buying some furniture. But before Spaces Collective, how did you guys collaborate to figure out, you guys would be good business partners?
Well, I think it happened coincidentally, actually. So we used to have a blog together. So one summer, I was on maternity leave and we were kind of just hanging out in my backyard with all of the kids. And I just brought up the idea of, hey, do you want to start a blog? So literally that afternoon, we kind of started a blog. And how
did that happen? Because Natalie took the pictures and you did the write-up? Is that what happened?
Yeah. So I used to handle a lot of the writing from my background in communications, and then Natalie was the photographer. And so it was a great match and it was the perfect thing. And then we kind of realized from there, we really don't love the whole lifestyle aspect of the blog, but we really loved the design aspect of it. And so we kind of wanted to narrow in more on that. And at that point, Natalie had started doing a little bit of staging for you. I had moved to the east end of Toronto.
Yeah.
I jumped ship.
So for those who don't know, we used to be next door neighbors.
Yeah.
And we even didn't have a fence between us.
There
At
was no
some
fence.
point, even our fat cat would work its way over to you. And we get a phone call from Julia and she's like, Charlotte's over here just sunbathing on her deck.
Yeah.
Like literally like
Or
so.
in your house.
In my house.
Oh yeah, that's right. A couple times she went in your
I
house.
found her in my basement once. Yeah.
Yeah, so you jumped ship, you went to the East End, but that actually helped me before you guys started the company. I think you did a couple of walkthroughs for me as well.
Exactly. So I helped you out of bed, and I think at that point Natalie was like, "Well, I would like to get going on a staging business, but I need a partner." And we always joke and say, like, we would never in a million years ever do this alone and start a staging company and do it alone. And so it was kind of a natural fit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's funny because you guys have, I wouldn't say different personalities, but it's funny. Their personalities, I guess it meshes well because it's like, well, that's probably the aspect. You guys aren't the same. You always button heads all the time, I guess. Right? Or at least not what I see. What happens behind the scenes, maybe. Well, I don't know. You guys,
We won't talk about that.
We won't talk about that. Exactly. Yeah.
We're still here almost 5 years later.
Yeah. So it's a good question. So yeah, how long has it been around? And you just recently got incorporated as well. How was that process?
Oh God. It was so challenging because you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And we,
sorry. And the reason why I asked that is because there's a lot of entrepreneurs who listen to this and they wanted to give a little bit of insight into, in getting incorporated. So yeah, go ahead. Sorry about that.
So I mean, prior to Spaces, when we were a partnership, I've had a couple of other businesses that were all either sole proprietorships or partnerships. So I kind of knew what I was doing in that respect. But once we incorporated, my God, there's just so many more rigid rules, and things that you really need to be aware of. That you don't know what you don't know. So it's been a really big learning process. We're almost a year in right now. And I feel like we've kind of got everything handled, and
hopefully
we'll be surprised next week with something new and maybe during our first tax run, but we'll see from there.
You were saying the other day you went to stuff with RBC. They made you write something, which was funny because it's actually the corporation. They made you write a letter saying that.
No, we were closing down. We had kept the partnership bank account open because again, you have to open a new bank account for the corporation, even though, there was, it was Spaces Collective and Spaces Collective Inc. So people were just not understanding. So we finally went to close the bank account for Spaces Collective Partnership. And as a business account, they wouldn't allow us to do it. We needed to write a personal letter with a date and why we wanted to close the account. And then they would send it off to head office to determine if we were closing it for the right reasons. I have no idea why they needed this, but we still don't have the account closed. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think there's just a lot of formalities that we just didn't really realize or know about. Like you said, like you just don't know until you know, right?
It's so funny. Yeah. So how did it, like when you started in staging, so you guys made a pretty big splash right away. Like, why was that? Like, I understand, like, we can see that, but for the people that don't notice, like, you guys have done very, very well. I'm not your only realtor. I'm actually one of your smallest, clients, I guess you say. You have some big names under your belt. How did that happen? How's it transition? How's it changed? Like, when you first started out, how did you get momentum and where did you start and how did it start? Maybe let's start with that one. Like, how did you start and where'd you get the name and how did it snowball so quickly?
Funny enough, there wasn't a process to how we started. I think we just jumped in head first and we started building our inventory, fairly quickly. And it was predominantly like what we could get for the next project.
But that being said, like, where did you find clients? Like, were you reaching out to realtors? Were you saying, hey, we're new, like, want to try us out? Or were you just going on Instagram? Well, like, how did that start?
We were really fortunate to enter at a time when the market was at an all-time high. It was soaring. There was business coming from everywhere and anywhere. And we started on social media. We were very comfortable with that from the blog. Mm-hmm. Natalie was still taking our photos of our stages. It was also a niche market where our design style, our staging style wasn't broadly adopted just yet.
And what would you classify that style?
I would say it's like fairly modern, but yet still very warm.
So we were hitting that right demographic that was purchasing at the time. So young families, 30 to 40s. There's a lot of traditional styling out there right now in the staging world. And we were a departure from that. So there was a handful of people in the city who were doing it really well, but to serve the entire market, and you know how many realtors, what is it up to now?
There's 70,000 realtors in the Toronto Real Estate Board, and we just heard over 95,000 in Ontario itself.
Yowza.
So if you imagine there's a handful of us that are doing one specific aesthetic. So really modern, really warm, really catering to these demographics that we're keying in on, and not so many others. So we were in demand right away. It was really, we just got pushed right like into the fire right away.
And so then like kind of leading up to the COVID times, we were still like busier than ever. And then sort of right after that is when the interest rates started spiking. And once that kind of happened, people were not buying they weren't buying as quickly. And like you would start to see, offer dates on a property, properties, like especially a condo, for example, they were selling within a week, if that, pre interest rate hikes. And then post interest rate hikes, say that 3 times fast, the market just kept, it just like came to a grinding halt. So we were definitely like taken aback by that.
Yeah, I noticed like, so for those that don't know, like the way that usually staging works, like your fee structure where like if somebody wants to hire you, it's usually a month, and after that there's a fee. Like how does that work? And then so something like this, if something stays on the market longer, it's probably actually more beneficial for you. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is. But at the same time, we were getting a lot of questions about extending the initial term, extending the second month, third month, fourth month, because nobody really had the confidence that things were going to sell and turn as quickly as they had been. So we were navigating some tricky waters because we didn't know when things were coming back. So also we weren't able to plan forward. So in the market, how it was when we first started, we knew things were going to turn within that 30 days. So then we could allocate that product to the next thing. And our lead times were between 4 to 6 weeks at the time. And we were always confident we had the inventory to support our projects. Now in this new landscape, we just didn't have the confidence, to be able to say, okay, well, we know this project is going to turn, or this condo is going to turn within 2 weeks. So we know we can move it forward. So not only was there, a struggle with the realtors, but there's a struggle on our side where it's like, we can't buy more because we're just cannibalizing all of our profits and revenue when we don't know when the next job is going to be, or when that one is going to turn. So it was really tricky, for us to navigate. But the one thing I will say is that we had some really great, developer partners, and that really helped float us a lot. So it's still residential. But when we work with the developers, it's a little bit different than working with, kind of like a one-off real estate transaction. Yeah.
So how does that work? So with the developer, like, so one of the questions I was asking on my list here was like, that'd be one of your partners. So developers, how does that differ? How would it, so you're saying, is it like a 6-month contract or something like that? Or what is it? Is it one-off, or there are multiple settings? How does that work?
Yeah. So I think the biggest difference is a lot of the time they're model suites. And so we're planning for that inventory to be in a space for 6 months to a year at least.
Gotcha.
And so, or until a property sells, which, they hold on to it to sort of act as a model suite. So, typically it's like, a lot of passive income, I would say, where we're just we've installed once and then we know in a year we're taking it all down. But the downside to that is we don't have access to that inventory. And so when kind of like lead times to get our hands on new inventory, we're like lagging months and months to get our hands on, like, let's say a new sofa. It was incredibly difficult, on our end, especially because we had the demand and we were turning down jobs in some instances because we didn't have the inventory to sort of, to furnish them.
That's probably been one of the most stressful things that we've been through over the last year and a half.
Yeah.
Just the lead times and the availability was one thing. And then after things became available, the prices just shot up.
Oh man.
So that's also actually been quite a bit of a challenge for us, where the prices of furniture has gone up. The prices of homes have kind of stabilized. So it's hard for us to increase our prices
and justify
that when the realtors they're not seeing the uptick on their end. So that's been
realtors,
so that's been a real big balancing act.
Yeah. So for inventory, how long do things usually last? Whether you buy a couch, is it you have like a couple of years, you have soft items. Is there like a shelf life for everything you buy? And then, or how does that work?
Yeah, I think a lot of it depends on the quality of what it is. And like, let's say, if it's coming from a big box place like IKEA, for example, it doesn't transport well. Like imagine, this stuff is being assembled and disassembled and brought on a truck multiple times within, a 6-month period.
Sorry, I'm laughing because I'm just thinking about how many times Natalie and I got into fights putting IKEA furniture together.
Yes.
And then it's like, well, the day before our oldest daughter was born, I don't know if you know this, Natalie had decided in our old house that she wanted to put together a couch from IKEA.
Yeah.
And we were fighting the whole time. She called her mom over and I had enough. Sure enough, I guess you were nesting and that's why you needed to do it. But it was like, I thought we were just going to kill each other that day. Good old IKEA. So as soon as you say IKEA, I'm just like, it gives bad thoughts in my head.
Yeah. I've witnessed many marital spats, guys. I have to say.
What are you talking about?
See, but we worked it out. Like I'm like the builder.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so in our relationship, I don't touch IKEA furniture. I don't touch many furniture. I don't touch anything actually. No. And if I do, it's all by myself.
So funny enough, Natalie has an incredible knack for reading IKEA instructions. Like most people can't read in IKEA instructions. She is like, it's as though she's written them. It's incredible.
It's actually funny though, because you think IKEA stuff is hard, but then you buy something from anywhere else and you look at their instructions and you're like, oh my God, who are these geniuses at IKEA? Like they're amazing. So it's all relative.
But IKEA's come a long way with their instructions. I'll give you that.
Oh, yeah. No, but I can come in and look out, like something will be like 1/3 of the way done. I'll be like, that's in the wrong spot.
That's upside down. Oh,
yeah.
And then I have to restart it.
So one thing you guys touched on, which I had a chance to before, we're saying when you started to get busy was right before the pandemic. And I don't know if people know or not, but I was on a TV show called Hot Market and we were on HGTV and we aired in February 3rd, I believe it was 2020. And
wow.
I was on 4 or 5 episodes and both you guys were on that show, right? So Natalie and I had a staging job. I think it was one of our last ones. And you and Paul, your husband, were on another episode with me where we're getting your backyard together in front yard and potentially sell, which still hasn't sold yet. But that's a different story. And then you guys were on one together. Do you think having that exposure helped you at all or not at all?
That's a tough one.
That's an interesting question.
It's really hard to gauge. Just like our Instagram account, like we know some business comes from there, but you don't know where that could lead. And you don't know who's seen it and then told somebody else and then told somebody else. We get jobs randomly and they'll be like, oh, you worked with so-and-so. I'm like, oh, we never worked with so-and-so. So it's really hard to tell. I can't definitively say, yes, this helped us out a lot.
Or X amount of business.
So you're saying I don't help you at all? Like, what's going on, guys? Come on. Give me some props. Come on.
We just can't quantify it. That's what she's trying to say.
Well, the funniest thing is Natalie would come home one day and she's like, oh, do you know this realtor's in your office? She watched all your stuff. She says, you're really good friends. I'm like, who the fuck is that? Like, seriously, I have no idea. It happens on more than one occasion, but I joke around. But sometimes I look, okay, I know that person, but it's like, but that happens too, right? I guess, but that's just, it's funny. It's not just from me, it's from other people too. They're like, they say it all the time. Like,
well, it's funny. It's always a little bit jarring. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen every once in a while where somebody will recognize us. But it'll mostly be from Instagram. Yeah. Nobody's ever recognized us from HGTV, but we'll be in HomeSense and you see somebody looking there, we're like, "Hey, Spaces Collective," and it's like,
come on,
I swear,
I've been stopped crossing the street and someone's like, "Hey, I know you. You're from Spaces Collective." I was like, yes, that's me." It's a funny feeling.
You stop, do autographs.
Yeah.
Carry a Sharpie.
That's ready to go. Yeah. Have those little face cards. I'm like, okay, that's pretty cool.
We need headshots.
So you ever thought about doing TV shows on your own if somebody has approached you, or are you too busy these days?
That's an interesting question. I don't know. I think we'd have to really evaluate it and see, because a lot of our time is eaten up by just the staging and running the business. So
and being mothers,
yeah,
and
that
wives.
And wives, yeah.
Somewhat good wives,
somewhat.
God.
We try.
So I just look at your experience on HGTV, and I think about if that opportunity crossed your path today, would you even be able to take it on?
I think I'd be able to take it on now, but I'd have to rely heavily on Julia, who was behind me, or Elise, depending on the time and market, because when I was starting HGTV, I just had the virtual assistants. They were kind of taking on the role and I wasn't as busy as I am now. but we've also worked on a lot of our infrastructure. So it's now, it's for showing something. So for listings, if I'm getting more listings, I would have a little more time. I just have to shut off the phone and basically say, hey, put on there or just have them answered. So there's ways around it. I absolutely relish an opportunity to do it one more time to see how busy we were with this type of market. But I get what you're saying. You can always work around it. I would never say no to an opportunity, especially something like that. And I would suggest that for the same. Somebody comes to you, instead of saying, no, I can't do it. I'm like, oh, let's see how we can work it out. Right.
Yeah. I think it would just mean a complete restructuring of how we do things today. But I think anything's possible, right?
Yeah.
Especially if
and I would hate to say no to an opportunity like that.
Yeah.
Right.
It's funny on that note, I was doing a deep dive on our previous projects and we used the spreadsheet to kind of track everything very easily. And I was looking back in like 2021, 2020, even 2019, and like just the amount of projects and our growth and how busy we thought we were and how busy we felt. And now I look at the processes we put into place and how much we can actually have out at one time or the amount of projects we can take on. Like I think I've just been working on some back end stuff on our inventory list. And, I think we have 25 projects out right now.
Amazing.
In one go. So it's like in terms of inventory, brain power, staff capacity, it's like that would have been mind blowing 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So
cardiac arrest.
Yeah. And that's you have brought on staff, which is great. And you're always looking at that, which has really helped you and it's helped my business as well. Cause I can't even have access to you. Like Natalie has to come do a walkthrough for me. She's like, okay, you have your staging system. She's going to handle this one. I'm like, okay, it's good to go. But at least I have somebody there I can count on, which is great. And I just pay them directly.
Yeah.
Yeah, people don't realize that. Everyone thinks that I get you for free. I'm like, no. The only thing I get for free is basically I own most of my furniture, but I still have to pay for the storage. I have to pay for you to walk through. I get somewhat of a discount, but it's not free by any stretch of the imagination. So
not at all. And a lot of the times, let's look at right now, for example, you've got so many listings coming out, all of your inventory is eaten up. So I have to figure out what we need from the spaces inventory, whether it's a full project, half a project, and kind of fill in those gaps. And now you're at the point where I'm actually not even filling gaps. We're just filling it with our stuff. So
which I have to pay you for. So, okay. On a different topic now, kind of similar. Is there something still in this business you guys have been in for 5 years now that still kind of gives you an adrenaline rush, a little bit of a high? Or is it like, when we first started real estate too, I'd have a deal and we're so excited. And now it's kind of like, okay, I got a deal. It's kind of like a 50 goal scorer, right? And the first year in the league, you're so happy. And then after you've done this 4 times, you're like, it's like old hat. Is there something that still kind of gives you that little adrenaline rush?
I know my answer.
Yeah, I have an answer too. So my answer is just a really nice modern.
That's exactly
a really nice modern
house.
Just a stunner of a house, and it has to be clean.
Surprise, surprise.
And vacant. Clean and vacant. Yeah.
No, I think we both still really get excited when we see that projects come in through our inquiries. And it's like, it could be a new build. It could be an older existing Victorian in Trinity Bellwoods. Those are always amazing. But when it's a project that we would get excited about to style ourselves and you start putting the furniture and the artwork in and it's just it's going to be incredible. And then you get there, you install everything and it's great. And then I don't know, when I take my camera out to shoot it and I see it in the lens, I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be so good. It's just, that's our absolute hands down.
So that's what excites you. I'll remember that for your next birthday or Valentine's Day. Look at this house, honey. Look what you can do to it. Get you in the mood.
Oh my gosh.
Buy me some furniture.
La, la, la.
So furniture you guys have used a lot. We know this answer, but what are your thoughts on virtual staging? Is there a place in the market which you would suggest somebody using it at all? Or what? I'm not a fan of virtual staging because I like people walking into the property and seeing what things actually look like, how things fit, etc.
Hey, save us an answer.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. So you're stealing.
So what do you think about Julia? What do you think about virtual staging?
So I think there's a place for it. It gets people in the door, but a lot of staging, it's based on emotion. So like, for example, like a first time buyer or a buyer with a family who's looking to upgrade their home, anyone who's purchasing with emotion behind them isn't going to walk through a vacant house and like be able to see themselves living there. And that's exactly what staging does. It's like, it allows the person to see themselves and their family in that space. And virtual staging, like I said, it gets you in the door, but that's where it stops. So,
and I think there's a time and a place, for example. I mean, what we found a lot recently, is that we're staging a lot of main areas. So we'll stage the main floor and we'll stage a primary bedroom. And then sometimes if it's like a 5-bedroom house, I've seen people then stage the second, third, and fourth bedrooms, which makes a lot of sense. Or I know you had one recently where it was, there's a tenant inside and you can't really.
We tried cleaning this property.
Yeah.
And Julia, we went in the next day and like my photographer was like, I thought you had this clean. He had put everything out on the counters and everything was dirty again. So thank God my photographer was like, okay, we got him to clean most of the tops. He's like, we can virtually stage this, show people way his bed looks now. And we did like 4 or 5 shots of a virtual stage. Just so in the listing, I said, this is what it potentially could look like because there was already stuff in there anyway.
Right.
But God, this guy is filthy.
Yeah.
Disgusting. Like literally, like we walk in, the first time I walked through, I took off my shoes. Like, oh, you don't have to take off your shoes. And I was like, I regretted it right away. And my feet got soaked.
Oh.
It was, and there was a dog running around. I didn't know if it was pee or what it was.
Gross. That's probably one of our biggest pet peeves.
Yeah, it was gross. Yeah. So,
but anyway, so virtual staging, I think there's definitely that time and that place for it. It's funny. We get a lot of people in our inbox, not realtors, but virtual staging,
renderings
and stuff. Oh, if you need anything, we're like, dude, this is this is exactly what we don't want. Right? Like we want,
Yeah, totally.
Anyway.
I always say this before when I talk to potential buyers and, what kind of my finger on the pulse, I'm an active realtor. We have an idea where the market is going usually, right? But another good indication I say is, because of you guys, we know where the market is when it's picking up. Because Natalie say, shit, we have like 7, 8 inquiries this week. I'm like, that's good. That means inventory is coming out. So where do you guys, in the last couple of weeks, where have you seen the inventory going? Are you even getting more phone calls to say there's going to be more inventory coming up? Or where do you think the market's heading basically?
We've gotten a heck ton of inquiries this last week. April, it was a really busy start and then got a little bit quiet, but May looks like it's going to be super promising.
Nice. Yeah. I see the same.
Yeah. I think it's come in waves, for us this year in particular. But busy overall, I would say.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, we're just going to try to wrap this up. It's, believe it or not, time is flying.
Wow.
Yeah. So in your own opinion, where do you guys see Spaces Collective headed in the future? Where you are now and where do you see it going?
So I personally don't like to think that far in advance. I can tell you where we are sort of in the next year. We like to get our own warehouse space. We'd like to kind of be in that sort of space and potentially Natalie and I kind of taking a back seat on being the faces in terms of physically being on stages and taking on more of like a managerial role. But other than that, still grinding.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is just really stepping back from the day-to-day installations and managing things on the back end, building a great team, and really just giving them the autonomy to go ahead and
be creative and do us proud.
Yeah, but it is a big challenge because we've been the face and on site pretty much every single time, save for a handful of times. So really just educating and conditioning a lot of our clients to understand that it may not be us every time. And that Spaces Collective is really a collective, not just the two of us.
Right.
So the question is like, so as realtors, I've seen even some shitty realtors. So realtors have a little bit of success. All of a sudden they become a coach. That's fine. Or some shitty ones like, I don't want to sell anymore. I want to become a coach or I want to be a team lead. Do you see yourself coaching other, maybe, it's something that I've never seen before in staging. And it's like, hey, you can potentially start a coaching career and say, here's how you stage. Because there's all the certificates of people. People ask all the time, like, oh, what kind of certification do you guys have? And we're like, yeah, we just have a good eye and we do this.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah.
Could you potentially see yourselves running a course and maybe being not only just a stager, but a teacher of a stager?
Coach is a funny thing. A mentorship maybe would kind of be more, what I could see. But staging's a funny business. Like there's, I don't want to say it's a low barrier to entry, but really there's nothing stopping anybody from doing it. Have a little bit of capital to start up and get some furniture and have a good eye. Obviously there's a whole, or this is also true. But also, there's a big business sense behind it.
Sure.
And I think we've we've learned a lot.
We have.
And I think that that information is probably the most valuable.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if somebody is looking to potentially, not even just staging business, just the business in general, right? What would you say were your top two things to do and not to do? So each maybe give you the one things you would absolutely, I'm not just saying staging, I'm just saying business in general. Give me your top thing you would absolutely think to tell them to do and the one thing you would tell them absolutely not to do. Julia, you go first.
Absolutely to do, like try to reserve a nest egg. And that's like personally or, in a business, just to have a little bit of a buffer financially, to kind of ride you out through those, waves and unexpected turns in the market in our industry. And then absolutely not to do, virtual stage. No.
No, just anybody in general. Just any business.
Any business.
So anybody's looking to start a business. What would you not, if you need to think of it, I'll ask Natalie.
Yeah.
So now, what would you say your go-to?
I would say don't. I guess to
No,
just kind of
your start. You say, what would you do? I'm controlling
it's
this.
kind
We're
of both.
finishing each other's
I
sentences.
know it's kind of both. I would say don't wait. So don't wait till the time is perfect. Don't wait till you think you're.
Oh, do you listen to my videos? Is that
what?
I know. I do that. I say that all the time.
You?
Oh yeah.
I got a lot of shit
I actually don't think she does.
To any videos.
I know she doesn't watch. She doesn't watch any of my reels. She doesn't watch any of my videos. She doesn't give a shit about me at all.
Listen, to be fair, I don't watch stories, and you know this. You can vouch.
They're not stories. They're reels.
Or reels, or anything.
Anyway, sorry. Don't.
Old. What do you want from me?
I know.
Anyway,
but yet I got a ton of like cat. We get memes and videos. Check this out. We're sitting there, but she doesn't watch reels.
I don't listen to reels. I watch cute cats.
Right.
But yeah, don't wait until you think you're absolutely perfect and absolutely ready, because you never are. And if you think you are, you're kind of behind the eight ball if you're not willing to learn and make mistakes and kind of go through those things that make you a better.
Yeah, I think that's a major takeaway for sure.
Yeah.
Because, anytime that we've, and I think we're a success story, but anytime that we've sort of held back and thought twice about something, it just wasn't, we were thinking twice about it for a reason and it just wasn't the right fit. And then anytime that we've kind of just jumped in head first, you know what? It's always worked out. Or we found a way to kind of get it to work out as much as possible. So I think that's sound advice.
Okay, fine. We'll end with that one. All right. So, and if somebody wants to get in touch with you, what is the best way for them to reach out?
On Instagram, you can reach us at spaces.collective.
And then we also have like an inquiry form on our website, spacescollective.ca.
Yeah.
So you just submit an inquiry and it's got lots of drop downs and information if you have a project that you're looking to have done.
It's awesome. Well, thanks guys for coming. And for your viewers out there, if you like this content, please like and subscribe. We'd love to hear your comments as well. Follow along these lovely ladies as well, because I know they're dying to hear from you as well. So, and obviously if you want to follow us along on any social media, you can find us everywhere. So, and subscribe also to this podcast. If you can, anywhere you listen to, we'd love to hear your likes and your shares and just follow along. We'd love to hear from you. Bye for now.